Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Cadence Independent Media production. Today we are talking about floor tom legs, and specifically, what do we need to know about the effect they're having on the sound and behavior of our floor tom? So the kit that we normally have here, these Pearl drums, have all floating toms, even including the floor tom. So I brought my GMS floor tom over today, which, if I'm being totally honest, has been fussy over the time that I've had it. Some rooms like it a lot, some stages like it a lot. There have been some recording situations where I wasn't totally happy with it. And I was thinking back to a vintage kit that I had back when I was in college, where I changed the legs out because I thought that I was putting on modern legs and it would make it sound better, and it completely killed the behavior of the drum. And when I put the original legs back on, it was happy again, and I didn't change anything else about the drum, not even the tuning. So when we're living with floor toms, especially larger ones like a 16 or an 18, they are susceptible to some components of physics that can be kind of frustrating. Now, when we're talking about floor toms, some of them sustain for days. You may have seen hacks we've done in the past to get rid of some sustain from floor toms. Other ones have the opposite problem. It's almost as if the sound of them is being crushed by their own weight in kind of a funny way. And this is one of those drums, in my experience. And it really depends on the heads and the tuning and everything else. But thinking about the legs, we decided to do a little experiment and go through a few sets of legs without changing the tuning to just kind of show how much of a difference it can make just changing out something as simple as this little guy. Now, the three that we're going to use today are some sort of typical, this one, Gibraltar, run-of-the-mill legs. We also have some slightly heavier duty, but still structurally the same kind of legs, but a little bit heavier. And we have a set of Pearl legs that have sort of a suspension mount in the foot of them that allows for a little bit more movement of the drum and a little bit less of it kind of sending its resonance into the floor. And just to reiterate, these are all going to be the exact same tuning. I'm just changing the legs. I'm not changing anything else at all. Now we're going to start out with the heaviest standard leg, which was getting us the deadest sound, and work our way toward more resonance. And if you stay to the end of the video, you can see a back-to-back of them right in a row. All right, first up, the beefiest of them all. Now, in the context of the beat, it still sounds like a floor tom. It's doing its job, but when you listen to the dynamic range of the single hits and things, you can hear that it's kind of not doing much at a low dynamic. It doesn't have much sustain. If you hit it really hard, it sounds like a tom getting hit really hard, but it doesn't have a lot going on in it. There's not a lot of low end. We actually went out of our way to kind of chill out the bass drum so that there isn't a lot of crosstalk there, and you're really hearing just the low end from the floor tom and not any kind of sympathetic help from other places. All right, let's power through. Next up is the standard Gibraltar leg. Simple, straightforward. Most people have seen them or hit a drum that has them on them. Slight difference, not super dramatic, but the less weight, possibly that break angle where the straight part of the leg goes into the part that goes out to the foot, different on these two sets. Could be an influence, hard to say, but still not really giving us that kind of musical sustain that we're looking for. All right, here comes number 3, this interesting little offering from Pearl. Okay, so that actually made kind of a huge difference. It was shocking to me, since this is my drum that I've played tons in lots of different rooms, that something as simple as changing out the feet on the legs turned it into a different instrument. Now, apparently you can buy these feet out there and put them on your floor tom legs if you're able to pull the feet off, but it is important to know that floor tom legs are not universally one diameter. There are 9.5 millimeter, 10.5 millimeter. Some vintage ones can be different. And also, not all brackets that receive these on the drum are universal. Some are a clamshell and can take lots of different diameters, and others, if you buy a 10.5, you can't put it in, and if that happens on a gig, if you bring the wrong ones, it's the worst. Additionally, if you don't want to get that invasive with your legs, there are other products, or you can make your own out of like acoustic foam or something like that to put under the feet. I've done that in studios a few times with backline kits that just weren't doing what we needed it to do. Lastly, the brackets that are actually on your drum can also influence this as well. These are kind of unusual brackets, and anything that is inhibiting the vibration of the drum, especially when you're dealing with low frequencies, which tends to be what you want from a 16 or an 18-inch floor tom, is going to be problematic. So any experimentation you can do with that could lead you to a better tone, or at least more tone out of the drum that you're used to. All right, here we go, back to back. Now, an interesting thing that I'm noticing when I listen to him back to back is that there's a little bit of that basketball-y sound that we're used to with unmuffled or unusually tuned bass drums in the floor tom. And that is for sure problematic, especially in close mics, but also it's kind of the sound of some frequencies getting crushed in the drum and other ones getting really thrown out of it that are not particularly pleasant to listen to, and that we don't associate with a large drum. It's kind of brittle and not fitting in the mix the way that you'd like. So what we're looking for here when we make these adjustments is not so much about the high end of the drum. It's about really promoting its opportunity to make the low parts of the sound. And if I were to pitch both of the heads up on this drum somewhat, I could get a full resonant sound with any of these legs. But it's when it gets really low that things start to get a little bit dicey. And I know for me that I want my 16 to be able to go ridiculously low. That's the reason to have a big drum, frankly, because a 14 is more versatile, in my opinion, than a 16 in terms of doing lots of sounds. And this has definitely led me to want to experiment a lot more with this drum and figure out how to get the most out of it, really. Hopefully you can hear that when we switched over to the suspension legs, the pearls, that kind of basketball-y component of the sound was surprisingly alleviated and replaced by a sustain and warmth and just a better kind of attack. If you've been through a lot of heads and a lot of tunings with your floor tom and you're experiencing things like this is definitely a useful direction to go in, even simply with just getting a few little pieces of foam to set the legs on when you're playing the drum, to see if it actually is ultimately like a resonant drum that's having something mounted on it that's ruining that for you. If you spend a bunch of time on this and all those other changes haven't done it, I would be shocked if this didn't at least get you closer to what you were after. Now, coming up in the future, we're going to get into kind of a next level past this, which is what the space you're in is doing to the sound you're making and what the sound you're making is doing in the space that you're in. Particularly with very low frequencies and also very high frequencies, something as simple as the material that the walls are made of or how high the ceiling is can completely squash the sound of your drums or can make them problematically boomy and sustainy and very difficult to control. With a drum like this, I definitely know that it sounds different right here than it does 10 feet that way. And even making adjustments for filming it in the middle of the room, I ended up having to change it when it came over here simply because of the way that this portion of the studio is tuned. So that's worth keeping in mind, and we're going to go super deep into that in the near future. So that about wraps it up. I hope that this has given you at least some pause to think about the behavior of your floor tom and maybe things you could do to adjust it or make it better or control it in a way that makes you even happier with it than maybe you already are. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe and hit the notification button so you hear about our new episodes. We are firing on all cylinders in Season 3. We are still doing new episodes every Tuesday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, along with lots of exclusive things on our Patreon. Please head over there, check it out. The link is below the video, and we have a lot to offer on there. It's really helping us make this season possible, and we are just through the moon thrilled that everyone wants us to keep doing what we're doing here. Lastly, if this hack works for you, or if you've come up with other ways to promote the sustain of your floor tom, or frankly, if you have too much and you want to go the other way, I'm always curious to see what people are finding when they need to solve these on-the-gig problems.